The question of the pupil. You have spoken of the glass ceiling. This is something we have never heard of before. Could you tell us what this is? The teacher replies. We have, so far, encountered a considerable amount of Gurdjieff's teaching as he presented it to Ouspensky. We know that Gurdjieff was teaching transformation. He spoke of the transformation to Ouspensky as the stairway, and we know that Gurdjieff was therefore teaching Ouspensky the first step, or the first part of the first step at least, of the stairway. Gurdjieff was asked, from where does the way begin? The way of individual development. He replied, the way begins at a level much higher than the level of ordinary life. Between ordinary life and the way lies the stairway. We must ascend the stairway before any individual development can even begin. And so this is what Gurdjieff was teaching Ouspensky, or at least he was teaching Ouspensky the first step on the stairway, or the beginnings of the first step on the stairway, because Ouspensky was only a pupil for 3 years out of those 6 years from 1915 to 1921. But we ourselves have started to discern the sweep of this teaching, the progression of this first part, or the first parts of this first step on the stairway. It starts with self-development, the idea of self-development. And for Gurdjieff, if we are going to develop ourselves, we must first know ourselves. You must know yourself. How are we going to know ourselves? Self-observation. We're going to observe ourselves. And Gurdjieff said, independently of Ouspensky, we've talked about this, views from the real world. In New York in 1924, he said, self-observation is enough in the beginning. Do not try anything else. Self-observation is enough for several years. And Ouspensky was a pupil for 3 years. So we can see that what Gurdjieff was teaching was self-observation. And that the tasks given to Ouspensky and others in the groups in St. Petersburg, the try-to tasks, as I call them, were given to enhance the process of self-observation. This is a very practical thing. Gurdjieff spoke about the way we walk, for example. This is an insert to the miraculous. If you walk in your normal way, then self-observation, you can't do it. You can't observe yourself. So try to walk in a different way. You walk at a certain speed. So try to change the speed at which you walk. You walk rather with a certain posture. So try to change your postures as you're walking. To enhance. The purpose is to enhance self-observation. You can't observe yourself if you walk in your usual way, so experiment. Temporary supervised tasks, experiment, try to walk in different ways. And there were many other try-to tasks. Try to struggle with the habit. So walking is a habit, try to struggle with another habit, try to struggle with the habit of immediately manifesting when you experience an unpleasant emotion. So we might swear or something, we experience an unpleasant emotion, we manifest, it's a habit. Try to struggle with this for the purpose of self-observation. To see that that's what you do, then you know yourself, you start to know yourself. It's entirely a practical task. And within this, of course, Gurdjieff called the group together in St. Petersburg and said, what is the most important thing that you have discovered in your efforts at self-observation? He was obviously dissatisfied with their replies, So he told them, the most important thing you've discovered is that you do not remember yourself. So within your self-observation, as a try-to task, try to remember yourself. If you can't remember yourself, or if you don't remember yourself within your observations, what are your observations worth? So this is an entirely practical task, self-remembering, within the context of self-observation, to enhance the process of self-observation. So we learn about self-observation. Now, this leads us to the first part, to the end, as it were, the first part of the first step, because Gurdjieff let slip in New York in 1924. He said self-observation is very difficult. You will realise this once you try it. And the purpose of self-observation is to come to the realisation that you can't do it. To come to this is your aim. And to come to this aim, you must try and try and try and try all these other means of enhancing self-observation, to come to the realisation that you can't do it. And this brings us to the close of this first stage, not the first step, but the first stage, the first part of the first step, which is to come to the realisation that self-development is not possible for us. Any attempt to change ourselves does not work and only makes our situation worse. Self-development does not work and makes our situation worse. This is the first descent of Beelzebub to the planet Earth in Gurdjieff's own writings. Now, Ouspensky came to this point in terms of self-remembering. Gurdjieff asked Ouspensky, "What's become, old fellow, of your attempts at self-remembering?" And Ouspensky told him, and this is written down in Search of the Miraculous. We know this. Ouspensky wrote, "Attempts at self-remembering gave no results whatsoever." Let me repeat that. Attempts at self-remembering gave no results whatsoever, except to show me that we do not do it. And Gurdjieff said, "Good. What more do you want? A man who knows this knows very much. But what does he know? He knows that any attempt to develop himself does not work and only makes his situation worse." So we're coming to this point, having proved it to ourselves at a very profound level in ourselves. Our attempts at self-observation, our attempts at self-remembering, our try-to exercises, we can't do them. It doesn't work. And in fact, in many areas, it only makes our situation worse. It disrupts the already delicately established harmony in us, such as it is, making our situation worse. As I say, this is the first descent of Beelzebub to the planet Earth. And this is the first stage, this is the first sweep. We're led in by the idea of self-development. How are we going to develop ourselves? We must know ourselves. How are we going to know ourselves? Self-observation. It doesn't work. We can't do it. It only makes our situation worse. So self-development does not work and only makes our situation worse. We prove it to ourselves. And Ouspensky arrived at this point. Attempts at self-remembering gave no results whatsoever, except to show me that we do not do it. "Good. What more do you want?" said Gurdjieff. "A man who knows this already knows very much." So we've made progress. We know that our attempts at self-development, whatever they might be, don't work and only make our situation worse. So let's drop all that, Gurdjieff effectively says, let's drop all that and let's start something else. We come to the realisation, he says, that we must remember ourselves. Because of all these efforts, and as Ouspensky says, attempts at self-remembering gave no results whatsoever except to show me that we do not do it. So Gurdjieff goes on to the next stage of this sweep of ideas. The next stage, we come to the realization that we must remember ourselves, Gurdjieff says to Ouspensky. But we can remember ourselves only if we have in us the energies for self-remembering. He doesn't say go on and on trying to remember yourself. He says, right, attempts at self-remembering gave no results whatsoever except to show me that we do not do it. Okay, good, says Gurdjieff, that's enough. Let's forget that. But in consequence, we come to the realization that we must remember ourselves, but we can only remember ourselves if we have in us the energies for self-remembering. And so a whole new phase of teaching begins, completely different. This is not indicated by Ouspensky, but this is what Gurdjieff was doing. So Gurdjieff started to teach from the ray of creation. He created a table of hydrogens. And from that table of hydrogens related to human beings, he created two food diagrams to show our situation as we are, as ordinary men and women, and the situation as we should be. To do with energy. We come to the realization that we must remember ourselves, but we can remember ourselves only if we have the energies in us for self-remembering. So he's starting to talk about energies and incredibly able to define our psychological energies, psychic energies, our psychological energies that science knows nothing about, and give them a structure and produce a food diagram and show where they are transformed in human beings. This is absolutely incredible. And so we have these two food diagrams and we look at them and what's the difference? Why are we as ordinary men and women living in this state in which we can't remember ourselves and we can't observe ourselves and we can't even stop this habit of immediately manifesting when we experience an unpleasant emotion? We can't do anything. It doesn't work, only makes our situation worse. Why are we in this situation? Why are we in this energetically depleted state? The first food diagram. And it emerges, it starts to emerge. This is about the time that Ouspensky perhaps decided he already understood Gurdjieff. Summer of 1917 into 1918. Ouspensky already understood Gurdjieff. That's that. Isn't there an account in Search of the Miraculous in the Caucasus where a lecture is given and Ouspensky sits to one side and doesn't listen and smokes a cigarette or cigarettes? And Gurdjieff came to him afterwards, why did you not listen to the lecture? Ouspensky already understood everything. I'd heard it before, he said, something like that. But Ouspensky had misinterpreted and misunderstood everything that Gurdjieff had said because Gurdjieff was starting this new phase and Ouspensky did not realize it. Why are we living in an energetically depleted state? Because the food of impressions sounds in us only as dough. It's hydrogen 48. It just stops dough. Ouspensky did not know why. He created a myth of a first conscious shock that we need to be conscious at the moment of the receipt of an impression. But this is not true. I can't say any more than that. It's just simply not true. To understand why the food of impressions sounds in us only as dough, why we are living in this energetically depleted state, we have to go to Gurdjieff's own writings. It's on the first page, virtually on the first page, so not far. You don't have to go far. And he says it's because we perceive automatically. We have an excellently working automatism for perceiving all kinds of new impressions. Why does the food of impressions sound in us only as dough, hydrogen 48, instead of passing do, re, mi, as it should? Because we have an excellently working automatism for perceiving. So it's about perception. Now if I say something here, the two major themes in Beelzebub's tales to his grandson, that is to say, the two major themes in Gurdjieff's teaching are that we perceive automatically and that we have two consciousnesses having nothing in common. Now when we look at the tradition coming from, the Gurdjieff tradition coming from Ouspensky, everything that's written about Gurdjieff, there is absolutely nothing in that tradition about perception, and there is absolutely nothing about having two consciousnesses, two conscious minds. So the two main themes in Gurdjieff's teaching are not in the Gurdjieff tradition at all. This is something that I've investigated, as you will know. But we live in an energetically depleted state, and Gurdjieff was able to show this as ordinary men and women, because the food of impressions does not develop in us as it should, because we have an excellently working automatism for perceiving all kinds of new impressions. So we're virtually here, in terms of perception, at the start of the second step on the stairway. So we've got a picture there of the broad sweep of what Gurdjieff was teaching. And we can also from this discern how it was that Ouspensky misinterpreted and misunderstood him and created a completely different teaching. So when we get to the question that you've asked, the glass ceiling, because Gurdjieff says, for example, we come to the realization that we must remember ourselves, but we can remember ourselves only if we have in us the energies for self-remembering. So it's about energies. So we have these food diagrams, and the energies for self-remembering, the energies for our augmented, normal psychological state, the second food diagram, come from perception. So we're looking at energies, and we then come to the realization, this is into the second step on the stairway, so I've taken you a long way here, into the second step on the stairway. Gurdjieff starts by saying we have a certain amount of energy, we must not waste it. So first of all, we are concerned with not wasting our existing energies. And then we start to look at ways of actually perceiving the world as we should, to augment these energies so that the food of impressions does sound in us do, re, mi, hydrogen 48 to hydrogen 24 to hydrogen 12. And we do have in us the energies for self-remembering and the other qualities, properties that we should have. And so we start to develop genuinely. But there is a problem. And this is the question you've asked, and I'm only going to answer it briefly, although I've gone on and on there. But I'm going to say briefly about this, because we then come to a point. Because we can create the energies we need by our own efforts in terms of perception and our own work upon ourselves in precise and specific ways to rebuild, in a sense, this energetic background to a normal psychology, the second food diagram. We can start to rebuild this, and it's a real event. These are real structures that we are recreating in ourselves. We are recreating, or creating perhaps, a genuine inner life, something inside that is real. We can produce these energies up to a certain point. But then we come to the realization that actually the energies we need for our development, each of us as individuals, come from two sources. One of them is us, our efforts, our work, in terms of perception and in terms of other activities, as I say, to recreate this genuine, real inner life in us, this energetic background to a normal psychology. But the other source of the energies is they must come from other people. we are dependent upon the people around us, the world around us, the situation around us. They must create energies, or energies must come from that situation and those situations that serve for our development. And to put an extreme, which would be incorrect if taken literally, but to put an extreme spin on it, let's say the energies for men are produced by women, and the energies for women are produced by men. So we come to a point where if the women around us don't produce those energies, as in ordinary life, they don't, then we don't have those energies and we're stuck. Likewise, if for a woman, if the men around her don't produce the energies that they should, then she doesn't have those energies and her development comes to a stop. This I have called the glass ceiling, and it comes from this realization that up to a certain point we can work in terms of our own energies, our own efforts. But then there comes a situation where the energies that we require as individuals come from other people and from other sources. And if they are not there, we are stuck. And this I have called the glass ceiling. And this is a problem that we have to find a way out of. And I think probably this is why Gurdjieff emphasized group work and why he was trying to set up his institute for the harmonious development of man. To create an environment where these energies that we require from other people and from other sources would be available to individuals, and that would allow their development to continue. So that's the beginning of the concept of the glass ceiling.